Alright, so tonight we're going to be talking about density, which you have probably heard me say 1.5 million times so far this year. And you will hear 1.5 million more for the rest of the year because we are going to be learning about it and testing it all year because it has a lot to do with earth science. So maybe you are referring back to this later on in the year because you forgot all about it, or you're just hearing about it for the first time. So hopefully you are taking good notes and jotting this all down because it's very important. Alright, if you were told an object has a greater density than another, what would that mean to you? Okay, if you were told an object has a greater density than another, what would that mean to you? So make sure you write that down in your notes. So what is density? It is the amount of mass given in a certain amount of volume. So an easier way to think of it is that if mass is the amount of stuff inside of an object, density tells you how tightly packed all that stuff is inside of an object. So we'll look at a couple of pictures in order for you to kind of visualize that a little bit better. So your example, both objects below, the carts, are the same size and can hold the same amount of mass. So if you go to the grocery store, all of the carts look the same. Object A has more mass or stuff inside of it, therefore object A has a greater density than object B, okay, because it has more stuff. Both have the same, capacity for things, but A has the most stuff in it, so therefore it has a greater density. Now here's another one. Both objects below have the same volume and the same amount of space to fill. However, object B has a lot more mass or stuff inside of it. So which one do you think has a greater density? Okay, so make sure you write that down. And of course, object B has a greater density because it has the greater amount of mass in a given volume. There is more mass in the same volume, so it is more tightly packed. So both have the same amount of volume, but object B has more stuff inside of it, therefore its density is higher. If an object sinks in water, would you say that it is more dense or less dense than water? Okay. And in this picture over here, it's got lamp oil, rubbing alcohol, vegetable oil, water, dish soap, Karo syrup, and honey, okay? And all of these are different liquids, and they all have different densities. So if an object sinks, meaning honey, would you say that honey is more dense or less dense than water? Okay, so you got to think about that. Also, look at these numbers. This is 0.80, 0.87, 0.91, 1.0, 1.03, 1.33, and 1.36. So if you put an object in water that is less dense than water, what do you think would happen to that object? So honey actually is more dense than water, so therefore it's sunk. And for our second question over here, if you put in an object in water that is less dense than this 1.0, which are all these up here, what do you think is going to happen? Well, they are going to float. Okay? So how exactly is density calculated? Well, density is calculated by using the following formula, which is mass divided by volume. And you can look at this over here and kind of draw a heart. And if you draw a line in the middle of it, it actually turns out to be an M on the top and a V on the bottom. So that way you can remember that mass goes on top and volume goes on the bottom when you're calculating density. So kind of cool. A sample problem for you. What is the density of an object that has the mass of 120 grams and a volume of 5 milliliters? Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up for you for a couple of seconds while you can figure that out. Hopefully it won't take you too long. If you need to, you can rewind this video and pause it, or you can look at your notes because hopefully it's already written down, the formula to find density. But what you are going to need to do is divide 120 by 5, and you should have gotten 24, and that is 24 grams per milliliters, because grams was on the top and milliliters was on the bottom, so it's grams per per milliliter. So make sure you have that down on your sheet of paper. Alrighty, hopefully all of your notes are filled in and you have a good evening. Make sure you bring in those notes tomorrow so we can check them off and you do not get a 0 for your homework. Have a good evening.